Totally Utterly Screwed by Grant J. Everett. Chapter 1. Petty Theft and Fancy Latin Words. A squeal of static broke the church-like stillness of the enormous supplies area like a pipe bomb in a china cabinet. A voice made from soggy cardboard hopped between tens of thousands of squawkers as it gradually droned its message from one end of the warehouse to the other. As the aisles of this emperor of a storage facility stretched for a total of 13 kilometres between office goods and luxury cheeses, it took quite some time for the broadcast to finish echoing all the way. Its words were a very, very bad omen. "Sanitation engineer Robert Tuesday is to see the captain immediately." There was a throaty snort and the smacking of gums deep among the fluorescent yellow shelves. At an altitude of 300 metres, situated so far above the armies of automated forklifts that their flashing hazard lights were barely embers, a scruffy head popped out from behind a towering pallet of vacuum-packed spinach puree. A chlorine-flavoured cigarette sputtered offensive green smoke from Bob Tuesday's mouth, a horrid pit made up of blackened teeth and frequent obscenity, and his eyes darted around in rat-like paranoia. He relaxed at the realization he was all alone. Tuesday stretched, yawned, and stepped out from his hiding spot. Like all civilian janitors serving aboard starships that belonged to the all-powerful human regime known as the Unison, Tuesday was dressed in orange coveralls and steel-capped cricket leather boots. Unlike other janitors, Tuesday's uniform was striped with patches across the shoulder blades, breast and both sleeves that declared parolee in blinking red block letters, and a tracking device was locked to his left ankle. The tracker's batteries had conveniently run flat for the 6th time this week, even though they'd been graded to survive a solid century of use. The 30-metre tall pile of liquefied spinach that Tuesday had been hiding behind for his 8th smoke break and power nap of the morning was but one monolith in a storage area so immense that it generated its own weather among the upper tiers. Looking up, a few wispy clouds curled about at the very extent of Tuesday's eyesight, but at least it didn't look like rain today. Glancing down, Tuesday wondered if that stowaway who went missing in the haberdasheries section 6 days ago had died of dehydration yet. Taking a second to rub at his gummy eyes, Tuesday ditched his chlorine cigarette in a wheeled bucket of neon green cleaning fluid, jammed a suspiciously clean mop into its maw, and pushed towards the closest gantry. As you'd expect from an era when where work health and safety and litigation had both gone utterly mad, the bright yellow freighter elevator was specifically designed to prevent compensation claims. Stepping into a roll cage, a pair of over-the-shoulder shock absorbers slammed into place on both sides of Tuesday's turkey neck, and the metallic bottom of his bucket was stuck fast with a magnet. 137 stories blurred past without a sound, and the G-forces were so intense at one point that the soles of Tuesday's boots were 4 inches above the weathered gridwork. Stepping off with a wobble, Tuesday pushed his bucket into a conveyor belt that instantly recognized his near-theoretical security clearance. In a matter of seconds, he'd crossed the full 10th of the warehouse and been deposited within eyesight of the primary exit. Tuesday knew that the request he'd heard over the PA was a portent of doom. He may be lazy, dodgy, light-fingered, disrespectful, smell like an expired tin of smoked oysters, and have no talents beyond amateur flower arranging, but Tuesday had the survival instincts of a cockroach and could smell trouble. And while some crew members might hope that they were being called in so the captain could congratulate them in person for some amazing achievement, Tuesday was certain that this summons was for the exact opposite. After all, Tuesday hadn't achieved one thing worth remembering in his entire life, and his chance of promotion were about the same as winning the lotto without buying a ticket. Reaching the unattended sign-in book, Tuesday paused just long enough to snort, hawk, and spit a disgusting brown glob of phlegm onto its open pages. A moment later, the laser-tipped pen bolted to its cricket leather cover vanished up his sleeve. chain and all sliding neatly into one of the many secret elastic pockets he'd sewn into his coveralls. The theft was committed as casually as breathing, and his skill bordered on magical. An eyewitness wouldn't have noticed a thing until Tuesday was well and truly gone. Passing beyond the flappy rubber curtain of the supplies area, whistling the offensive theme song from the controversial immersive vid show Wildest Xenosexual Celebrities Revealed, Tuesday rattled his mop and bucket down a broad, slightly curved corridor. The boffins who designed this starship had apparently equated high-tech with no straight lines, so as soon as Tuesday had escaped the perfect right angles of the supply area, every surface suddenly ranged from slightly rounded to completely circular. As this was officially a Navy ship, needless decoration wasn't a high priority, so despite the emphasis of curves, its design would be best described as utilitarian and efficient, within the less important areas anyway. Continuing to whistle, Tuesday casually headed towards a turbo lift that was currently spewing out 20 or so Navy scientists. Like all the tech staff on board, they were dressed in midnight blue uniforms, weighted down with far too much gold piping, and they all seemed to be in a massive hurry to get wherever it was that they were headed. Most of them were tapping away at holographic displays projected from tiny omni implants buried in the meat of their left hands, flicking their eyes at retinal screen readouts that only they could see, or snapping tongue-twisting jargon at distant workmates over the omnipresent unison-wide network known as the Link. Whatever had kept everyone so busy for the last few days was light years above Tuesday's pay grade, but he had no interest in such things anyway. If he couldn't smoke it, sell it, or get hammered on it, Tuesday's general care factor was nil. Wearing a totally neutral expression, Tuesday gently made his way through the dark blue mob from the opposite direction. Innocent as a dove as he brushed against them too softly to detect, the crowd abated for a moment as Tuesday made it to the empty lift, and as the triple doors slammed close, he bared his rotten teeth in a horrible smile. Reaching into the orange sleeve of his coveralls, Tuesday extracted 3 gold watches, 4 diamond-studded wedding rings, a pair of designer sunglasses, 5 of those retro-style matchbox-sized mobile phones that had been all the rage yesterday, and a single pair of pearl earrings. He sleeved the phones again and dumped any water-resistant treasures into his wheeled bucket. The stolen items sank beneath a layer of thick froth and disappeared. As you'd expect from something called a turbo lift, the pod shot across 617 stories in a matter of 4.3 seconds. Tuesday experienced half a second of weightlessness around the middle of the trip as the capsule hit full speed, but his voyage was over so quickly that nothing tipped over or spilled. In those brief moments, Tuesday got a fantastic view of the outside of the ship through the transparent outer walls of the turbo lift. It was 2 immense, glowing white lines that seemed to go forever, a middle finger brandished at physics and a raspberry blown at the immensity of space. The greatest starship ever conceived. It was the Carpe Astra. Then the view was gone. Although the starship served as a monument to the genius of Tuesday's species for the last 3 weeks, it had also served as the formal location of Tuesday's work-release parole placement. And no matter how gilded a cage, a prison is still a prison. So in his own way, Tuesday had made the most of things. Admittedly, those things technically belonged to other people, but a lifetime of scummery was hard to break. Tuesday slouched out of the capsule and dawdled along a much nicer part of the ship than where he usually worked. Bucking the Navy's normal aesthetics of function over form, this level was designed to impress visiting VIPs and had been decorated like Xanadu itself. There were orchids sourced from 100 worlds with colours so vivid that looking at them from too long could cause permanent eye damage. Huge postmodern Gabba Gabba abstract paintings that had a lot in common with the scribblings of a colourblind 5-year-old, and even a range of living, thought-reactive sculptures that could twist and change in hypnotic ways depending on how the passing humans were feeling at that moment. In addition to that, every square inch of floor was carpeted by stain-resistant shag, so thick you could sink all the way up to your shins if you didn't walk fast enough. The mood of this most opulent of levels was further reinforced by soft, calming violins and pianos that had been digitally slathered over the top of some intense subliminal messages. While the human ear was unable to consciously pick up any of the underlying white noise, the brain would lap up these sounds like a thirsty dog at a bowl of tap water. Designed by the first aural engineers, the underlying messages were able to actively boost all your cognitive processes while reducing your stress levels. There were plenty of urban legends about vegan extremist terrorists hiding harmful depth charges within these brain-altering compositions, but it was pretty common knowledge that vegan extremists preferred nerve gas and chainsaws, so nobody actually believed the rumours. Pushing the tools of his trade up to the elegantly bare secretary's desk situated outside the captain's loft, Tuesday went as slowly as humanly possible without actually coming to a complete stop. There was a reason he was going at such a lazy pace. If he put a bit of pressure on just the right spot with his mop, the wheeled bucket would make a noise like a dagger's tip being drawn down a chalkboard, and although he was sure to keep his gaze averted from the secretary's face, Tuesday could clearly see her expression of agony in his peripheral vision. The shrieking bucket continued to claw at the inside of her teeth until Tuesday finally halted in front of the grandmotherly lady's desk. He looked up with a sleazy smile. "Sanitation Engineer, Class 9, Tuesday reporting, love." The secretary's eyelid twitched as her line of sight darted between Tuesday's horrid teeth, his sloshing bucket, and finally towards a cluster of holographic displays being projected from her Omni implant. She swiped at one of the intangible screens a couple of times with the index finger of her right hand before looking back up at Tuesday. It was clear that whatever she'd just read had soured her view of the janitor even more than his deliberately horrible entrance. "Take a seat." "No, please. No, please? Interesting." Turning on the spot, Tuesday squeaked his bucket all the way to the furthest point in the waiting room. Casually, as though he had no idea how annoying he was, Tuesday sat on a padded chair bolted to the carpet and calmly watched a Ugandan cockroach darting between hiding spots. Although he'd been ordered to turn up immediately, 15 minutes silently passed without anything happening. After the life he'd led, Tuesday knew all about the waiting games. They were a basic psychological technique designed to make the guilty party sweat and worry, keeping them off balance before the interrogator went in for the kill. Unbothered by doing nothing, after all it was his fourth favourite thing, Tuesday continued to wait with the patience of a man well accustomed to being on detention. 5 more minutes passed before the captain, a snooty nerd in a midnight blue uniform decorated with 5 kilograms of gold edging, appeared in the ivory doorway. Glaring down at the janitor, he gestured sharply over his shoulder. Tuesday smiled at the secretary one last time and walked inside. The size and comfort of the captain's loft would put most 7-star presidential suites to shame, and the office was dominated with what may be the greatest treasure trove of video game memorabilia from the late 21st and early 22nd centuries. All the items were displayed on polished oak shelves and arranged both according to genre and alphabetically. They were all in their original shrink wrap and protected by thick, unbreakable glass. The pride of the captain's collection was a sealed-in box beyond console from the Miyamoto Kojima, an almost non-existent piece that the majority of collectors would sell their entire families just to be able to see with their own eyes. The Beyond was the very last console that the Japanese gaming giant had produced, as a slight design flaw in its cortical shunt had the unfortunate tendency of converting 1/3 of its users into serial killers. Miyamoto Kojima was quick to release a corrective software patch that was 100% guaranteed to completely nullify the problem. Unfortunately, as the patch carried a price tag of $9.95 and took half an hour to download and install, the update was seen as nothing but a cash grab and was wildly unpopular. Most users decided that 2 out of 3 was pretty good odds and that their German yen would be better spent on games. All the Beyond consoles were thought to have been hunted down and destroyed after the infamous Mushroom Kingdom massacres, so how this one had slipped through the net was a mystery. An intelligent alien shrub extended a blue frond towards Tuesday as he walked past and made a depressing little whisper as he ignored it. The double doors shut behind Tuesday with a thud, and 4 enforcers positioned themselves between him and the only way out of the room. War-criming roid monkeys were dressed in your standard sapphire-coloured riot gear and armed with stunners, sting cuffs, burn spray and pain buttons. One of them snatched his mop without a word as though disarming a deadly weapon. Crap. While Tuesday had guessed this morning wasn't going to end well, those already low hopes suddenly nosedived. The captain spent a full 30 seconds silently glaring at Tuesday from the other side of his immense mahogany desk, the rage in his eyes indicating that he was barely restraining himself from throwing an ergonomic chair. When the captain finally took a seat, Tuesday went to do the same without an invitation. However, the look on the captain's face made it clear that the janitor would keep his butt cheeks elevated unless he wanted them to be surgically removed. Despite all the obvious hostility, Tuesday waited patiently, trying not to smile despite the bleak situation. After an ice age, the pompous captain finally spoke. "Robert Tuesday," the captain began, narrowing his eyes. "A defective, no-hope, 2-bit parolee of no fixed address that some backwater legal system had the audacity to jam into my arse in the name of, rehabilitation." Tuesday saluted smartly. "Reporting, sir." The captain was taken aback by this unexpected enthusiasm, but only for a second. Tuesday had that effect on people. It was hard to tell if he was a total moron or the smartest guy in the room. The captain rolled on towards his point. "The Carpe Astra is the most expensive object ever created by man, bar none. She is important beyond measure. What happens aboard this vessel will impact our descendants for all time." The captain got to his feet and began pacing behind his desk, a sure sign of being on edge. "Do you know why we have janitors on this starship, Tuesday?" "Class 9 sanitation engineers, sir," Tuesday corrected, somehow keeping a straight face. "Do you know why we have Class 9 sanitation engineers on this starship, Tuesday?" the captain repeated with twice as much aggression. Tuesday shrugged. No idea. We have Class 9 sanitation engineers because the experimental technology we're testing requires that we keep everything spotlessly clean if we want to remain at peak efficiency. That's why, because if things aren't clean, that means they're dirty. If they're dirty, that means they're unsafe. If a single component is unsafe with the godlike levels of science we're messing about with here, the captain trailed off before making a ripping gesture with both hands. "Boom! That's what." "Boom?" Tuesday repeated. "Boom." "Ah." Tuesday sucked his sad little teeth. He glanced at the enforcers, who were still standing there impassively, then back at the captain. "Boom. Noted." "So, is that all, Captain? We've got a hot tip that Jimmy Slummer is heading to the Muncho Taco for the all-you-can-eat burrito deal again, so all us sanitation engineers need to be prepared for any serious projectile poop-related emergencies that may arise. So I'm due to go fumigate the captain cut Tuesday off mid-sentence with a hand motion, squinting his piggy eyes in hatred. "Oh, I haven't even started." Veins visibly throbbed on the captain's shiny forehead and neck, and drops of sweat weaved through his bushy eyebrows. A flick on his left hand instructed his omni-implant to create a holographic paperback book in midair, which he then snatched as though it were a physical item rather than sculpted light. "Your continued placement as a parolee on board the Carpe Astra relies on regular reviews once every 6 months. As you've only been here for 3 weeks, your first review isn't due for some time. However, due to factors that I'll come to in a second, I've decided to bring your review forward to right this moment." The holographic book was so well formed that the captain was able to rustle its pages with believable sound effects. We've been recording every single microsecond you've spent aboard the Carpe Astra from a dozen different angles, and what I'm holding right now is a summary of your more notable activities. Tuesday's eyes widened, and the captain instantly assumed a look of triumph and spite. What's that, Sanitation Engineer Class 9 Tuesday? Is something the matter? Oh, so you weren't aware that we are constantly recording everything that every crew member does while they're aboard the Carpe Astra. Or that these recordings are closely monitored by an army of AI watchmen around the clock. Tuesday glared. Our surveillance system is the best ever created, Tuesday, boasting fourth-dimensional high-def video, flawless surround sound, infrared, night vision, X-ray, and far, far more. Just to spell out the sheer depths of how utterly boned you are, we've also been using no less than 15 different kinds of classified scanners that are so far above your pay grade and comprehension I'd be forced to kill you if you even knew what they were called, let alone what they do. The captain placed his hands on the desk. Hard. His arms were shaking. So, as you may have surmised by this point, Tuesday, we know what you get up to, what laws you've broken, how many days it's been since you last brushed your teeth, and the exact wingspan of the Ugandan cockroach currently living in your cornflakes box. The captain smirked. 12 centimetres. She's been eating well. The notebook's pages rustled as an interruption. I'll begin with what appears to be your definition of a standard shift. You start by getting to work 2 hours late, though you're always sure to use an illegal code-smashing device to cook the books when you think nobody's watching. Once you do get to work, the 6 hours that remain of each shift are broken up into various sequences of drinking, sleeping, and smoking. You've engaged in so many variations of dereliction of duty that even after all the years with the Unison's Royal Navy, I don't even know what to name half the things you get up to. To make matters worse, you are also partial towards illicit narcotics such as shatter, spaceman, nirvana, blink, and purgatory, but quite a few of the chemicals in your system don't even have an official classification yet. The captain tapped at his holographic book. A page flipped over. But the thieving is on another level altogether. Starting less than 4 damn minutes after you first stepped on board, we've had thousands of items go missing from just about every vending machine, deep freeze, medical fridge, personal locker from arse to armpit, and crew members have posted so many lost property reports for precious items that I've had to ban public bulletin boards. Until we looked closely at these recordings, however, we never could have guessed just how extensive your "it wasn't me" Tuesday grunted, interrupting the tirade with what might be the most flimsy denial in the history of petty crime. Both of the captain's manicured hands thundered down onto the aged mahogany. Blue veins pulsed above his maroon neck and face as though he were about to burst like water mains. An enforcer brought Tuesday's mop bucket over without needing a prompt, reaching into its green depths with a Kelvar glove, and fished out Tuesday's haul for today in one big handful. There were rings of all sizes encrusted with gems from a dozen worlds, chains made from gold, silver, platinum, and more exotic metals, earrings, designer sunglasses, a string of pearls. A second enforcer grabbed Tuesday by the sleeves and violently shook his arms until a whole appliance shop of electronic devices tumbled into the captain's desk. Besides the personal organisers, media players, those kitschy retro-style mobile phones, and a few other devices, Tuesday couldn't even name half of what he'd stolen, only that they looked as though they were worth something. The same 2 enforcers pushed Tuesday down into a chair at a motion from the captain. They wordlessly resumed their place at the double doors with the remaining pair of armoured thugs. On the bright side, it looked as though he was allowed to sit down now. The captain pinched the bridge of his nose. His triumph over the sanitation engineer was obviously warring with his extreme anger, so it took a few calming seconds to cool down enough to talk. To put it simply, Tuesday, we have endless reams of incriminating surveillance footage. We know where all your stashes are, and every stolen item we've recovered thus far has been slathered with your genetic markers. We've gathered so much evidence that I've had to place 3 admin people on full-time shifts in the Wednesday department. The Wednesday department? Tuesday clarified. The captain raised his nose imperiously. Yes, so named because their job is to come after Tuesday. The captain's eye twitched, possibly because he'd silently thought the Wednesday department was a really clever name, but now having second thoughts about its true level of wit. He shook this away. Now, have you got anything mature and appropriate to add about being a one-man crime wave before I stick you in a coffin cell until you die of a combination of old age and terminal boredom? Yeah. What? Tuesday casually mouthed a chlorine cigarette from his crumpled packet, drew acid until the suck burner auto-ignition tip glowed a neon green, and put his filthy steel-cap boots on the expensive antique desk. He bared his little brown teeth in a hideous smirk. 2 things. Firstly, dickhead, tell your mum to stop telling everyone what a good lay I am. Secondly, Tuesday was interrupted by a grinding noise, the sound of fingernails digging into lacquer. When the captain straightened up, there were 10 permanent scratch marks gouged into the desk's thick varnish. Then he snapped. The captain leapt over his desk, scooped Tuesday up by both shoulders, kicked the chair from beneath him so hard one of its wooden legs went spinning away, and pounded the Class 9 sanitation engineer into a wall of unbreakable glass. He growled, teeth bared, spittle flying into Tuesday's ear. Go on. I'm very interested to hear what you have to say next, Tuesday. Pinned in place, Tuesday calmly raised a sexy, lacy pair of neon pink panties to face level. He smiled at the captain's widening eyes. Secondly, are these delicates regulation issue? Snapping his head down so fast he almost got whiplash, the captain made a gurgling, choking noise at the sight of his unbuckled trousers lounging around his ankles. Somehow, impossibly, the frilly knickers he'd been secretly wearing were now spinning around Tuesday's index finger. Stunned, twitching, his brain seizing up as he tried to comprehend how Tuesday could have accomplished this impressive magic trick, the captain let go of Tuesday's throat as though the janitor were radioactive and staggered backwards. How? Hearing the beginnings of a snort, the captain swerved towards the 4 enforcer bodyguards and almost tripped over the crumple of his ankle-height trousers. Sadly for his security detail, it took a second for the captain to regain the presence of mind to cover up his shame. If it were any consolation, there wasn't much to write home about. Despite this being the funniest thing any of the enforcers had ever witnessed, somehow they were professional enough to keep staring straight ahead, poker-faced. Unable to speak for a moment, deflated from the humiliation that would doubtless follow him for the rest of his career and beyond, the captain half-whispered, half-growled 3 words as he tried to wrestle the lower half of his uniform back into position. By the ears. As instructed, Tuesday was picked up by both ears, 1 enforcer on each, and physically dragged out the door and down the hallway. It was difficult to tell if he was laughing or screaming. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.